A divine voice broke the silence of my heart. It said, "Leave your homeland and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you." This voice was not audible to ears, but it was clearer and more powerful than the roar of any storm. The voice said, "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. And through you all peoples on earth will be blessed." These were the words of the Lord that marked the beginning of my story. I am Abraham, born Abram, in Ur of the Chaldean, in the prosperous city of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers nourished the land. My father Terah was a respected man, but our lives were ordinary, marked by the seasons and rituals of a polytheistic society. The divine call was both an awakening and a rupture. "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you'll be a blessing." Genesis 12. How could someone like me, a mere mortal among many, be chosen for such a destiny? The promise was as overwhelming as the night sky under which I stood. And here at 75 years old, my incredible story begins when I decided to overcome fear and embark on the journey. I could not imagine reaching the age of 178 years or having a great offspring. Here begins my story with a heart full of hope and faith. I obeyed the Lord and set out with my wife Sarah, Lot, my nephew, and all our possessions, and the people we had gathered, heading toward the land of Canaan. It was a journey full of hope, guided by divine promise. We traveled northwest, crossing through Haran, and finally reached Canaan, a land of fertile hills and valleys. It was a diverse region inhabited by Canaanite peoples and fortified city-states, each governed by its own king. Life in Canaan was different from here. Fields and vineyards stretched as far as the eye could see, and the scent of olive groves and fig trees filled the air. Although the land that lay before us was rich and promising, it was occupied by other cities and cultures. I traveled the country to the sacred place of Shem under the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites owned this land. It was there where the Lord appeared to me again, promising. Then I moved to the mountainous region east of Bethel, and between Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. I set up my camp there. I also built an altar to the Lord and called on his name, marking each place of my stay with an act of faith and devotion. Despite the test of our faith, it was not long before the bridal land, which welcomed my steps under the blessing of a divine promise, soon became hospitable under the yoke of a severe famine. "Why have you brought us to this place?" I wondered, looking up at the sky, seeking answers. The decision to head to Egypt, the land of the Nile, and its full granaries, was made with regret, knowing it would test the Almighty's promise to take care of my family, and to fear not. Fear not, Abraham echoed the promise. "I am your shield, your very great reward." Genesis 15. Even so, aware of Sarai's beauty and fearing for my life, I devised a plan. Sheep, cows, donkeys, maid servants, donkeys, and camels marked my stay in Egypt, which was marked by the dissonance between the opulence of the palaces and the enslavement of many of its inhabitants. Yet the Lord inflicted great plagues on foe and his people because of Sarai. Pharaoh, realizing the truth, confronted me. "What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she was your sister?" Allowing him to take her as his wife. "Here is your wife, take her and go." He ordered his men to escort us along with Sarai and all our property. As we were expelled from Egypt, we not only returned to Canaan with more than we had carried, but also with a deeper understanding of the nature of our God, a protector, a provider, an infallible guide in times of uncertainty. From Egypt, I went up to the Negev with my wife and all our possessions, and Lot came with us. By God's blessing, I had accumulated great wealth in livestock, silver, and gold. We continued our journey northward, returning to Bethel, to the place of our first encampment between Bethel and Ai, where I had previously built an altar to the Lord, and where I called on his name again. Lot, who accompanied me, also owned sheep, cattle, and tents. Our possessions had grown so much that there was not enough space for us and our herds, which led to conflict between my herders and Lot's. At that time, the territory was inhabited by the Canaanites and the Perizzites, further complicating the situation. To avoid disputes and maintain peace, I proposed a solution to Lot. There should be no strife between us nor between our herders, because we are family. Look over the entire land before you. If you choose to go to the left, I will go to the right. If you prefer to go to the right, I will go to the left. Lot looked out over the Jordan Valley, which was a fertile land reminiscent of the Lord's garden or Egypt before the destruction of Sodom. And Gomorrah, he chose for himself the whole region of the Lower Jordan and moved eastward, separating us physically. I stayed in Canaan, while Lot settled near Sodom, whose inhabitants were known for their wickedness and sin against the Lord after Lot. And I parted ways. The Lord spoke to me again, reaffirming his promise. Look up from where you are to the north, north, south, east, and west for all the land that you see. I will give to you and your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as numerous as the dust of the earth, if anyone can count the dust. Then your descendants can be counted following the Lord's command. I traveled throughout the extent of the land, conscious of the divine promise granted to me. Eventually, I moved my camp and settled near the oaks of Mamre and Hebron, where I built an altar and communed with the Lord, grateful for his guidance and promises of blessing for me and my offspring. One day, the Lord came to me and appeared while I was sitting at the entrance of my tent in the oaks of Mamre during the hottest part of the day. When I looked up, I saw 3 men standing nearby. Without hesitation, I ran from the entrance of my tent towards them and bowed to the ground in a sign of respect and hospitality, saying, "My Lord, if I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass your servant by. Stop and rest a while under this tree. Let me bring some water, so you can wash your feet and rest under this tree. I will also bring a piece of bread, so that you may refresh yourselves before you continue on your way, for you have come to your servant." For some reason, they agreed, saying, "Do as you have said." Immediately, I went to the tent where Sarah was and urged her, "Quick, take three measures of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread." Then I ran to the herd, selected a choice, well-fed calf, and handed it over to a servant to prepare. Without delay, I served curds, milk, and the cow that had been prepared to our guests who sat under the tree. As they ate, when they asked about Sarah, my wife, I replied that she was in the tent. One of them, whose words carried the weight of divine promise, said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and by then Sarah will have had a son." Sarah, who was listening from the entrance of the tent, laughed to herself, disbelieving the idea of experiencing the joys of motherhood and fatherhood at our advanced age. The visitor, aware of Sarah's laughter, inquired, "Why did Sarah laugh?" Thinking, "Can I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have given birth to a son." Frightened, Sarah denied laughing, but the Lord affirmed, "Yes, you did laugh." After the men departed toward Sodom, I pondered the divine purpose and prepared to bid them farewell. The Lord shared his plans with me, considering whether to hide what he would do in Sodom and Gomorrah, since I would be the founder of a great and blessed nation, chosen to teach justice and righteousness to my descendants before the imminent destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. I approached the Lord, interceding for the city. Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? If there are 50 righteous within the city, will you then destroy it? The Lord promised that he would spare the city for the sake of the 50 righteous. My concern for justice led me to further intercede, reducing the number of righteous needed to prevent the city's destruction to just 10. The Lord in his mercy agreed not to destroy it if he found these 10 righteous people. When 2 angels arrived in Sodom that evening, my nephew Lot was sitting at the city gates. Seeing them, he rose to meet them, showing respect and bowing to the ground. He pleaded with them to come to his house, his servant's abode, to spend the night where they could wash their feet and in the morning continue on their way. Although initially reluctant and willing to spend the night in the square, Lot insisted so much that they finally accepted his hospitality and headed to his house. There Lot prepared a meal for them, baking unleavened bread, and they ate. We hadn't spent much time together when the men of Sodom, from young to old, surrounded the house, demanding that Lot hand over the men so that they could abuse them. Lot went out to confront them, and closing the door behind him, pleaded that they not commit such vice. He even offered his 2 virgin daughters instead of allowing harm to his guests, a desperate decision that showed his commitment to protecting those who had come to his house. However, the crowd rejected him and threatened to treat him worse than the others when they tried to force their way, and the angels intervened, saving Lot and blinding the attackers so they could not find the door. Afterward, the angels revealed to Lot the purpose of their visit, the imminent destruction of Sodom. Due to its great wickedness, they urged Lot to gather his family and leave the city. Lot tried to warn his sons-in-law, but they did not take him seriously. At dawn, before Lot could hesitate, the angels took him by the hand along with his wife and daughters and led them out of the city by the Lord's mercy. Once safe, the angels warned Lot to flee to the mountains. Without looking back, Lot, fearing he could not make it that far, asked for refuge in a nearby small town, Zoa. The angel agreed, allowing Lot and his family to take refuge there. When the sun rose and Lot reached Zoa, the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah with sulfur and fire from heaven. Lot's wife, disobeying the command not to look back, became a pillar of salt. The next morning, I returned to the place where I had stood before the Lord, watching in horror as the smoke of destruction rose from the ground. Although divine judgment had fallen on Sodom and Gomorrah, the Lord remembered his promise to me and spared Lot. A testament to divine justice and mercy. Amid judgment, the devastation of these cities was a somber reminder of the consequences of sin and the importance of obedience to God. From there, I moved to the region of the Nephs, settling there. Then Amk, king of Gerar, took Sarah into his palace. That night God intervened in a striking way. He appeared to Amk in dreams and warned him that he was about to make a grave mistake by taking Sarah, as she was my wife. Amk, surprised and frightened by the dream, defended his innocence before God, claiming that he acted in good faith based on the information that both Sarah and I had provided. God, in his mercy, acknowledged his innocence, and precisely for this reason intervened to prevent him from sinning against him. God ordered that Sarah be returned to me, and add that I, being a prophet, would intercede for him so that Amk would not die. At dawn, Amk summoned his servants and told them what had happened, causing great fear among them. He then called me, and with great distress asked why I had acted in such a way, exposing him to commit such a serious sin. In my defense, I explained that I believed there was no fear of God in Gua, and that I feared for my life because of my wife. I also revealed that by saying Sarah was my sister, I was not lying, as she was indeed my half-sister as well as my wife. I explained that Sarah and I had agreed to say this to protect ourselves. Amk, in a gesture of goodwill to repair the misunderstanding, returned Sarah to me and compensated us with sheep, cattle, male and female servants. He also offered his lands for us to settle wherever we saw fit. Moreover, Amk gave Sarah 1,000 pieces of silver as a way to clear her honor. After this incident, God intervened for Amk, his family, and his servants, so that they could have children again, as God had closed the wombs of all the women in Amc's household. Because of Sarah, God heard my prayer and healed everyone in Am's household, demonstrating once again his mercy. And the Lord visited Sarah and me in a miraculous way, fulfilling his promise in a manner that surpassed all our expectations. Sarah conceived and bore a son in my old age, as God had announced when our son was born. I named him Isaac in obedience to God. 8 days after his birth, I circumcised Isaac, faithfully following divine instructions. At that time, I was 100 years old, a testament to the power and faithfulness of God. Sarah, overflowing with joy, exclaimed, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. We never imagined that in our old age we would be blessed with the joy of having a son. On the day Isaac was weaned, I celebrated with a great feast, marking the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. However, not everything in our family was cause for celebration. One day, Sarah saw Ishmael, the son Hagar bore to me, mocking Isaac. This led Sarah to ask me to expel Hagar and her son, as she did not want Ishmael sharing the inheritance with Isaac. This request deeply troubled me, as Ishmael was also my son, but God intervened, telling me not to be distressed because of the boy or your slave woman. He told me to do as Sarah asked, for through Isaac my offspring would be reckoned. However, God also promised to make Ishmael into a nation because he was my offspring. With a heavy heart, but trusting in God's promise, I prepared Hagar and Ishmael for their departure, giving them provisions for the journey and bidding them farewell. At dawn, God did not abandon Ishmael. When Hagar and the boy were in a desperate situation in the desert, God intervened, ensuring them a future and divine protection. Ishmael grew up in the wilderness, becoming a skilled archer, and his mother married him to an Egyptian woman. At that time, Amk and Phal, the commander of his army, recognized God's blessing on my life and sought to secure a relationship of mutual loyalty with me. I swore to treat them with the same loyalty they had shown me. However, tensions arose over a well that Amk's servants had seized. Despite this conflict, we managed to come to an agreement and celebrated a covenant sealed with the exchange of gifts and oaths in Biba, which means Well, of the oath, after these significant events in my life, if one day God decided to test me, he called out, Abraham. I responded here, I'm always ready to listen to his voice. Then he gave me an instruction that would shake any father's heart. Take your only son, Isaac, whom you love so much, go to the region of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering on a mountain. I will show you. I cannot describe the storm of emotions that engulfed me at that moment. Yet with unwavering faith in God I rose. Early the next day, prepare my donkey and set out with two of my servants and my beloved son Isaac. I cut the wood for the sacrifice, and we proceeded to the place God had indicated on the third day of our journey. I spotted the destination from afar there. I told my servants to wait with the donkey while Isaac and I continued. We will worship, and then we will return to you. I assured them. I loaded the wood for the sacrifice onto Isaac and placed him on the altar. When I reached out to take the knife to do what God had commanded, a voice from heaven stopped me. Abraham, Abraham, it was the angel of the Lord calling me. I responded here, I am, and the angel instructed me not to harm the boy, showing that my fear of God was genuine. As I had not withheld my only son, I looked around and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. I took it and offered it as a burnt offering in place of my son. That place was called The Lord Will Provide, a declaration that became a testimony to God's provision and faithfulness. The angel of the Lord blessed me for the second time from heaven, and together we returned to Bozbah, where I continued living, reflecting on the profound lesson of faith and obedience that God had taught me on Mount Moriah. Sarah, my beloved wife, lived to be 127 years old. Her death in Kiryat Arba, now known as Heb in the land of Canaan, left me immersed in deep sorrow. I mourned for her and grieved, feeling the emptiness her departure left in my life. After withdrawing from the place of her death, I approached the sons of hate. I was among them as a foreigner. Owning no land of my own, I said to them, although I am a mere foreign resident among you, please grant me a plot of land to bury my wife. I wanted to purchase it at a fair price to establish a family tomb. Among them, Ephron, who was present at the meeting, generously offered both the field and the cave in front of all those present, saying, I give it to you in the presence of my fellow citizens. Bury your wife. Thus the field of Ephron and Pelolon, with the cave and all it contained, became my property, formerly acquired before the community leaders there. I've buried Sarah, marking the field of Miller facing Mamre in as our family tomb. This acquisition before the sons of hate ensured a resting place for my family for generations, a testimony to my life among them and my commitment to the land promised by God. After Sarah's death, my heart found comfort and companionship in Keturah, a woman I married. She blessed me with more children, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishak, and Shua, thus expanding the family. God had promised me Jokshan, one of my sons, became the father of Sheba and Danan, continuing the lineage that the Lord had promised, which would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. To Isaac, the son of promise, I had with Sarah, I bequeathed all my possessions, fulfilling what God had established. I lived 175 years a life, full of challenges and blessings, marked by my relationship with God and my commitment to His commands. When my time came, I died in peace, satisfied with the life I had lived, and rejoined my ancestors, leaving behind a legacy of faith and obedience. My sons Isaac and Ishmael, despite distances and differences, came together to bury me in the cave of Mela, the place I had acquired as a family tomb. I hope this story inspires future generations to trust in God and follow His ways, just as Abraham did. If you want to learn more about biblical events, don't miss the next video that's now appearing on the screen. Discover what the world was like before the Great Flood. Click and watch. Thank you for being here, and may God bless you.